Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Delvin Youssef, and I'll be your moderator for today's session, From Bots to Agents, Why Identifying AI Traffic with Certainty Matters. Get comfortable, grab a snack, and get ready for a conversation with two incredibly accomplished speakers with us today. For those of you joining Fingerprint for the first time, Fingerprint is a foundational layer for modern fraud defense. Our device intelligence platform gives businesses a highly accurate way to distinguish good visitors from fraudsters, whether they're human, bots, or agents. We help businesses stop attacks faster and stay ahead of emerging AI-driven threats. Before I hand things over to our speakers, I do have a few housekeeping notes. We'll have time for Q&A at the end of today's session, so please submit your questions for our speakers throughout the session in the Zoom Q&A box down below. Today's session is being recorded, and we'll follow up afterwards with a link to the recording so you can visit the recording on demand. And lastly, closed captioning is available. You can enable it using the caption option at the bottom of your Zoom panel. All right, on to the good stuff. So today we're joined by our host, Valentin Vasilyev, co-founder and CTO at Fingerprint. Fingerprint originally began as an open source project in 2012 under the name Fingerprint.js before becoming a SaaS product in 2019. Valentin brings more than 20 years of software development experience and was recognized as an Entrepreneur of the Year finalist earlier this year. We're also joined by Paul Klein, founder and CEO of Browserbase, the cloud infrastructure platform that lets AI agents interact with the web through headless browsers. Before Browserbase, Paul was CTO and co-founder of StreamClub and also spent 3 years as a software engineer at Twilio during its IPO era. We have a really exciting conversation ahead of us. So Valentin, I will hand it over to you.
Thanks, Delvin. Okay, let's get started. First, the agenda, what we are going to cover today, the authorization problem, why we need it, what wasn't working, how the world is changing, the agentic side of the story, how agents are being authorized now by companies. Then we'll spend the bulk of our conversation today as an open conversation, and then we'll leave some time for the live Q&A. So let's first start with the problem, like what kind of problem we had before. And I'll start by mentioning some history first. The bots were around for as long as the internet. Like companies and people like to automate stuff, and they use scripts, they use developer tools, they use network tools, and more recently they started building bots on top of the browsers, such as take Firefox and automate it with Selenium, a library that can click links, navigate pages, submit forms. Then later, after Selenium, there were like a wealth of other libraries. Google and Microsoft released things like Puppeteer, Playwright, etc., which worked with Google Chrome. And Google Chrome made a very important shift. They officially started to support the headless mode in Google Chrome. And these libraries were now able to automate Google Chrome officially in headless mode. And for as long as all of these things were possible, like everyone had a pretty clear idea that bots and automation were generally bad and they should be blocked, with like very specific exceptions, such as Googlebot, that was allowed to scrape web content. Everything else was going to be blocked by website owners, by backend API owners, and this is now changing. And as you all know, starting in 2023, OpenAI released the ChatGPT product, which understood natural text, natural prompts, and responded in a natural way. And now these AI tools are powering autonomous AI agents that not only summarize information but act on behalf of the user. They have agency. They can complete things for you. They can notify when they're done. So the internet is changing as a result, and humans and people would like to delegate their work to AI agents to complete the work for them. And now these agents are representing humans in order to do useful things, buy airline tickets, compare prices. Actually, they can ask for a permission to use your credit card, to ask for a permission to redeem a coupon or a gift card, and complete meaningful agentic commerce actions on the internet. And this old paradigm of let's block everything that's automated no longer holds true. It's no longer it's no longer working. It's actually hurting the internet. Now you have this decision kind of to make as a website owner or website operator. Should I allow bots to access my website and thus introduce risks from like potential malicious automation, or should I continue blocking access to my website? And this is a kind of tricky balance there. And that's what we're going to tackle today. That's the historical context. And I'm going to mention like a few ways how companies usually detected bots before and why those things are not really working today, and how the new method of bot authorization came about. So the old methods relied on heuristics like handwritten rules, like if a user agent is this, then this is a bot. And there were behavioral signals. Is the mouse moving like at a Bezier curve rather than a random like trajectory, then it's a bot. There were also things such as let's look at the IP range or ASN, autonomous system number from which the bot came. Is it data center IP, for example, then it's a bot. So, and lastly, like DNS resolution was used. But all of these methods aren't really working. Like heuristics, handwritten rules, easy to spoof, easy to override by automated software. You can easily replace your HTTP headers. You can replace your user agent, both in the browser and on the HTTP level. Behavioral signals are kind of not working today because like every single like automated browser automated by an agent looks behaviorally the same, and it's a uniform picture right now. So behavioral is not really working either. Maintaining IP ranges on like PTR records, all that stuff is clunky, and only big companies like Google, maybe Bing, were able to maintain like this DNS system of verified IP addresses that linked back to the DNS records. And verification was slow and inefficient. You had to do multiple requests just to verify you're not being spoofed by a malicious agent. That's why in like around May of last year, 2025, Cloudflare came up, invented this new standard proposal called Web Bot Auth, Web Bot Authentication. And the idea there is instead of using like heuristics or behavioral or like IPs, things that are very easy to spoof, use a cryptographic method based on a very solid like foundation of HTTP message signatures and on public key cryptography. The idea there is company would self-publish on their domain in a known location their public key, and then companies can verify using public key cryptography that the agent actually it is who it claims it is. Like if an agent says, I am AWS AgentCore, then the verifier can download the public key, perform the asymmetric cryptography, do the public key verification and confirm, yes, indeed, that's the AWS AgentCore. Right now, companies like Browserbase, OpenAI, AWS, Manus, Anchor Browser, and many, many more support this standard draft. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So yeah, Paul, what's your perspective on what's happening with the Web Auth recently?
Yeah, you touched on like a lot of important stuff, which is that, hey, the way that I've operated my website for the longest time was preventing adversarial attacks, presenting adversarial usage. And more, we're finding that it's beneficial to allow AI to interact with my website. I want my website to be in the weights of the models, or I want someone asking ChatGPT to allow ChatGPT to look at my website. Um, we need a way to identify what is good traffic and what's not good traffic. And simply using a CAPTCHA or a fingerprint might not be the best way. We need a way to actually identify the source of that traffic and let good actors self-identify. And WebBot Auth is actually one of the ways that we think really can enable good actors to self-identify in a way that's more, scalable than just registering IP address ranges or using a user agent. Those things are spoofable or hard to maintain. Using a cryptographically secure way of signing your messages saying this request came from a trusted party, and then passing that through to whatever, firewall you use to protect your website, this is going to be kind of the future. But the most important part is, as the website operator, you have to configure it. You have to enable your website to get access, be accessed by agents. So at Browserbase, the way that we do this is we enable Web Bot Auth for our customers using this thing called verified agents. We call our Web Bot Auth implementation verified. And we kind of imagine it almost like a blue check mark for agents, where we talk to our customers, we understand their use case, and we say, this is a trusted use case. We will go ahead and make sure it's verified and sign it using our browser signature. Our customers don't have to go get their own signatures. They can use ours. The agent goes to a website, potentially a fingerprint protected website with the Browserbase signed fingerprint as part of the HTTP headers. And Fingerprint's able to read that signature and say, hey, this came from Browserbase. And because of our partnership, because of the work we've done together, and because of the trust and KYC that we do on our customers, we're able to know that it's going to be a good agent. So we still want to stop bad bots. And Browserbase wants to prevent all of the bad bots from happening. And you still might want to use different techniques like a firewall to prevent them. But you also want to let the good bots through. So you can imagine Web Bot Auth and verified agents by Browserbase as a way to identify good bots, good agents, and let them access your website. Valentin, I think that you've thought a lot about how does Fingerprint identify the difference between the two. When you think about good agents and bad bots, what are some behaviors that you want to try and make sure the agents are doing that are good, but also stopping the bad ones? I think LLM training is kind of a really interesting one.
LLM training, legitimate content consumption, but the use case I'm most excited personally about is enterprise automation. We like to use agent to help us do our jobs, and we would fire up a browser signed by Browserbase to copy CRM tickets, reset accounts or passwords, do automated refunds, process other things that usually take a lot of time as a copy paste, like day-to-day dull, like boring operations, like AI browsers. Automated browsers signed with Web Bot Auth are all like great tools to automate this work. So I'm very excited about enterprise use cases when companies just become more efficient. They grow the revenue per employee using these tools. And in order to do that, they need a reliable, cryptographically secure way to say, yes, this automated browser comes from a known partner. We are able to verify that the partner name is in the signature, and we can allow that agent access our internal systems to perform like record keeping or record copying, like tasks, whatever. Yeah, I'm very excited about all those cases.
Yeah. And really, this is about enabling website owners to choose. Instead of having carte blanche, block all bots, you really want to try and allow agents that are going to be beneficial for your business if it matters to your business. Some providers, they might not want to allow agents to access their website, and that's okay. They may want a human-only experience. And I think that's still the recommended path for some people. But part of this webinar, what we're talking about is like you actually now have tools as a application operator or website operator to bring or allow agents to access your website. And we're seeing this at Browserbase ourselves. Of course, we also operate a website and an application, and people sign up, and a lot of our signups are coming from AI. And as a business operator, CEO, I'm often thinking about how can I make sure that if AI is referring traffic to my website so they can use my product to solve their problems, I don't want to give them a bad experience. I don't want to block those agents. And agents actually in the developer tool space are now actually signing up for software to configure it for you. I use my Claude Code and I ask Claude Code to please configure this software for me. I want it to help me go buy and use software to build my application. And if you don't change the defaults, if you don't configure your firewall or your WAF to allow verified agents or Web Bot Auth, which is being supported more and more by different providers, you might be missing out on agentic traffic that could be beneficial for your business. And as an industry, I think we're moving more towards default allow as the option. But until that becomes consensus, it's just important that you have awareness about, hey, there is a new paradigm here. There is a new way to know if I can identify good bots from bad bots, and I can actually allow them into my website while still mitigating a lot of the concerns around, massive web scraping, massive web traffic. You can have your cake and eat it too, thanks to Web Bot Auth and verified agents, but it's still early, and it's going to take time for this to be more and more impacted. And I think there's a lot more things that we have to discuss about what changes in this industry. Um, yeah, Valentin, you want to kick it off here? I mean, there's a lot of questions that you and I have talked about how this shakes out for the rest of the industry.
Yeah, yeah, I like when you said it's early, things are just a lot of things are unclear, and some things are really a wild west. We don't know what's going to happen. The real enterprise adoption right now is around maybe 1% of the traffic today is automated with AI agents, depending on your use case, of course. Some is lower, some use cases are much higher, but overall, like blended across like the industries, I think it's around 1% if we add like agentic commerce. Yeah, so like customers are asking questions like, what if we don't sign a request? What happens? How will Fingerprint react to an unsigned agent? Because not all use cases are a good fit for a signed agent. And from Fingerprint's perspective, this choice belongs to the customer, to the user, whether they want to sign or whether they don't want to sign. If they sign, it's a fast forward into an authorized agent experience, verified provider, identity is verified, guaranteed no spoofing because cryptography. But if the agent is not signed, Fingerprint will detect it as a general automation and give that visibility to the website operator and tell, hey, we are unable to verify the signature here, but we can tell it's an automated browser. So it's ultimately the choice of the agent operator what to do there. So what's your take on this, Paul?
Yeah, I think for the longest time, you need to give incentives for people to use new systems, right? And for the longest time, there wasn't really an incentive for someone doing automation to say, hey, I'm automating. But more and more, if we can create inroads where people building good agents actually have a way to say, I'm building an agent that I think is very useful and is bringing business or is beneficial for the application owner, in servicing ways for them to identify that so that website owners have a way to identify the signal from the noise. That's really what I think is most exciting here. And I think it solves this long-term problem that we've had, which is that, with a block all strategy, you are actually getting some false negatives in there. You are preventing legitimate access to your application from potentially your customers that might be building AI features and use your application, from prospective customers that are trying to evaluate your product and discover it, or even your own teams. We've actually had situations where customers of Browserbase are automating their own website, but they're massive organizations and they can't actually turn off CAPTCHAs or anti-bot reliably for their entire surface area on the web. So they've used Web Bot Auth to sign some of the traffic and say, okay, we can at least allow this part through. So all we're doing here with these new frameworks and protocols that are being adopted industry-wide is giving content owners and website owners more and more tools to actually allow agents in or out. But I think there's a lot of questions about how you're going to be able to sign every agent. I mean, I think it's going to be, there's a lot of different types of agents, and the role of Browserbase here is to represent many types of companies that are going to be using the internet on behalf of their AI. And our job within Browserbase is to make sure we're doing a good job of KYCing those customers and understanding that, hey, if you're spinning up a hobby project, it's probably pretty burdensome for you to go get your own signatures, get those registered with Cloudflare, Fingerprint, etc., and then go downstream to website owners and ask them to turn it on. What we think at Browserbase makes a lot of sense is actually using a platform that's going to manage a lot of this, handling of signatures, generation of them, signing of requests for you, while also bundling it with the browser infrastructure that's required to operate the agent. These two go hand in hand, identity and browser. And maybe kind of going on to the next one, when we think about enterprise adoption and we think about what enterprises are doing, I've been really impressed and surprised by how sophisticated enterprises are getting in their AI adoption. It's not just rolling out, a frontier model or product to their applications. Enterprises are building AI agents. And a lot of these enterprises are often building AI agents, but they haven't yet developed the downstream MCPs or APIs to power these agents. So they fall back to the web that we use every single day. That's why we're building this company. We think Browserbase fills that gap where AI can actually use the web that you use instead of having to rebuild it for AI. But they run into problems. Getting the infrastructure running and working well is the first thing they run into. But as soon as they have their browser running, in their sandbox of choice in their cloud environment, it gets blocked because it's coming from an AWS IP because of the default block policies. So we think that this is going to be a big solution for that. And I think, Valentin, I'm curious, how often are you hearing from customers that are working, out in the enterprise world, supporting automation, and they come to you asking for solutions here? Because I think that's probably driving a lot of the strategy on your guys' side in terms of Web Bot Auth and signed agents and how you actually can make the web more accessible for AI.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think generally our customers' requests fall into two big buckets. Number one is service level adoption. Like if an agent is not a browser, but rather a service running like like a service process living somewhere in a data center that connects into your into your company's network or has an integration with your CRM system or Slack. Like a good example, Claude Tag. Claude Tag has its own identity now in Slack. You can talk to it like a real person. Everyone can talk to it on your team. So it's an agent that can complete useful work. And verifying what it can do is yet an unsolved problem because of its own identity. So the service level authorization within an enterprise is one big question. E-commerce backend agents is another one. Actually, I said two buckets, but there are three. And also how to make websites more accessible to agents, because websites were designed for humans. They are full with huge, clunky JavaScript, HTML, navigation is not efficient. So Google is building something like WebMCP standard to enable a much easier processing of websites operations by an AI agents. So I think overall the industry right now is very interested in like service level identity, e-commerce, agentic automation, and how to represent the identity there, and the WebMCP and making the websites more accessible to agents and websites that were designed for humans. Like I said, I think these are three kind of directions that I'm thinking and
Yeah,
hearing about.
it is like this is just the first problem is the access to the application. Like can my AI get to my website? Then the second layer is like can it actually use the website reliably? And there's a bunch of strategies here. WebMCP is really cool. Basically allows you to register little like mini MCP servers on your web page that can link to, hey, fill out the sign in form or fill out the purchase request and connect to downstream JavaScript services and make the page navigation really good. We've seen for our customers, when they expose WebMCP on a website, our agents are just so much more effective, like 45% more effective with WebMCP. So if you aren't adding that to your website and you want to enable AI to automate the product better and complete the checkout or sign up for your service or use your dashboard, WebMCP is certainly worth checking out. And in the data, it's proved to be very effective. I'll add on, the future of these protocols. Right now, just saying this is an agent that's trusted and this isn't an agent that's trusted, it's probably not sufficient for the granularity that some, content owners or website owners really want. And I think where we go from here is really interesting. There's a bunch of different ideas around more information that agent operators can provide to companies like Fingerprint or downstream website owners to help better give more context around what the agent is doing. Now, I think you may have seen some of the proposals around this stuff like use case classification or using X forwarded for sending along the original IP of the owner of the agent, the downstream human. That's like what's X forwarded for look like in a agent world where it might be me on my home computer sending out a request, but my agent's operating a data center. What maybe could it be extended in this protocol to help website owners know where this agent is actually coming from?
Yeah, exactly. I think the industry is a little bit wary to allow agents to do anything, even though they could be authorized. And we need a more robust, kind of higher level agentic identity built, like you mentioned, X forwarded for there is know your agent proposal. Um, I think there's going to be like a web standard. A big player needs to like help the industry there to accelerate this. But what I find like fascinating is that agentic identity is not only a technical problem, but it's a legal problem too. Like you want to know who is the human behind that agent. Like if the agent did something bad, nefarious, you cannot how to say it. You cannot litigate with an agent. You need to litigate with a business entity, right? And there needs to be a clear chain of like proxy identity leading back to the human, and that's what industry hasn't figured out yet. And that's what I think everyone is on top of everyone's mind: how to link agentic identity back into a business identity or like a service account or human identity for a consumer, whether it's like this forwarded HTTP header or something else or additional signatures. There is projects like Visa Trusted Agent Protocol, for example, TAP, that sits on top of the Web Bot Auth and adds additional agentic identity and tokenized payment method linked back to the Visa's agentic store. And there are similar initiatives by other companies. There is MasterCards, and there are, of course, backend e-commerce like protocols like ACP, UCP by Google, etc. So all of this will, I think, kind of amalgamate into a single agentic identity very, very soon, and we should be ready for that. I'm personally very, very excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is protocol soup. There's so many acronyms and so many different things. So it's definitely confusing as an agent builder. Like, what should I be thinking about? If I'm a website owner, what should I be thinking about? And I think the answer is often working with providers that are kind of living, breathing, and eating this stuff every single day. With Browserbase and Fingerprint, we handle all of this for you. We handle determining the right protocols, helping enforce them, moving them along in the industry. It's a full-time job to kind of stay up to date with agent identity. And I think that that's where we're spending a lot of time to try and make it better and try and figure out the right levers for our customers to pull. One thing that I see a lot about is like where do captchas live right now? Where are the predominant spots? And I think the login and sign up flow is the biggest place where people are trying to prevent bad signups, prevent, account takeovers. But then there's this new paradigm where agents are also signing up for services and products. And I've seen a lot of really cool innovation from here. What's the guidance that you're giving the Fingerprint customers around should my agent be able to sign up for things? At Browserbase, we've seen it become very, very useful for agents to sign up for services so they can actually go and use the service as part of completing a task and they become, DAUs. It turns out agents actually use products more than people. They can work all the time. They can use your dashboard every single day to get updates. What are you recommending or seeing for the people you work with at Fingerprint? And how should we be thinking about agentic signups right now? Because that does seem like an area where this can be the most common friction point for customers who are building agents.
Yeah, at Fingerprint, we are philosophically against visual friction. So we are against visually distracting a consumer so that as a consumer, I need to reach out for my phone to take a QR code photograph, or I need to solve a capture. I'm very annoyed, and I think these things are going away. So visual friction is not the right answer from our perspective. We want cryptographic verification. We want device attestation to be used, proof of work to be used, things that are invisible. We want a safer internet with less friction. That's our answer. When our customers talk about recapture, how to replace, we would tell them use authorized agent detection. We please allow agents to create accounts. We'll give you detailed statistics like was this account created by an agent? What the provider was? Are there any additional risk signals associated with that? What's the velocity information around this specific visitor identity that we support? So we encourage everyone to start adopting agentic signups, agentic logins, but at the same time, we don't like visual friction, and we like kind of under the hood invisible verification of and risk analysis.
Yeah, you brought up the good point. And this is what we're doing for Browserbase. How do we allow someone to sign up on like browserbase.com as an agent? And we're trying to treat agent signups differently. We're thinking about how do we allow agents to sign up, but then recognize that like an agent sign up might not have the same privileges as a human sign up right away. That might also have a signal. We might know, hey, this is an agent sign up. It might want to have different rate limits just because at one point we want to have human in the loop. Or we know agents might not have credit cards by default. So maybe we give them a more generous free plan but know that they have a limited scope of access. So agentic signups is not just a technology problem that you saw with firewalls and Antibot, but actually it's a product problem. You think about how do I want agents to use my product and sign up? Do I want to maybe constrain their access or give them more access? And I really would challenge anybody building applications that want to encourage good AI to use it to really think from first principles about how should I be redesigning my product to better enable AI, but also protect my business. And I think with the tools that you're getting from Fingerprint and Browserbase and a lot of providers in the space, you have a lot more granularity. But in the end, you still need to think about what my settings should be and actually take action to configure those because by default, it's going to be a lot more restrictive. And I think a lot of the kind of conversation that Valentin and I've had is around what makes sense for agents. I'll maybe address the elephant in the room. I mean, Browser-based Fingerprint, it's an unlikely partnership. right? How did we get here? I'd love to kind of go back to the beginning. When you think about Fingerprint in its job in identifying, automated browsers, and Browserbase in our job of providing automated browsers, this partnership is kind of unique in our industry where we're able to kind of work together. I'd love to hear, I'll share my perspective afterwards, but I'd love to hear your perspective of why it makes sense to partner with the browser base and start to try and bridge the gap between these two sides that have commonly been adversarial.
Yeah, when we thought about that, yeah, we had some doubts that companies would want to partner with a bot detection company, but our mission is to enable a safer internet through device intelligence. Our goal is not simply to detect automation, but is to enable frictionless experience for consumers. And working with a partner like Browserbase is a great way to do that. Browserbase built a great platform to sign automated agents, and Fingerprint can verify that under the hood efficiently without any visual friction. So I think it makes sense. When you use the two or happen to use the two, you build your agent on the browser base, and then it goes out and gets verified by Fingerprint. There's zero friction, so it made sense for us.
Yeah. On our side, it's been great to work with technology companies that see that this is a granular issue and give customers more control. That's the number one thing we want, is to give customers as much control as possible of how they want agents to use the web. And that zero friction experience is actually the way the world is moving. Clicking a CAPTCHA is going to be solved by AI. Even though if I don't know if I can solve all the CAPTCHAs these days, they're getting more complex. But the models are getting quite good at figuring out which one is the horse and which one is the cat, right? So I think that it becomes so clear that for AI to really be able to harness the web that we use every single day, we need to find a way for the web and AI to kind of meet in the middle. And at Browserbase, we think the partnerships we make with cloud providers, with partners in the security space, those are the ones that's actually going to solve what I think might be the biggest problem, which goes to our last point, which is that we have these AI models that are extremely capable. They're very, very smart. They're getting smarter every day, and they can't do all the tasks that we do all the time. And I kind of always wonder why. And it turns out it's this problem called diffusion, where there's model capabilities, it's overhanging their actual things that they're doing for us. And that diffusion is an engineering problem. And the engineering problem is, well, how do we let agents actually use the internet that we have and use every single day? And that's what we're talking about today. And one thing that I think we need to kind of solve next is not just agents being able to access the web with the right infrastructure, being able to sign themselves and say, hey, my agent comes from Browserbase. But how do we actually think about trust for agents, where how can we let agents carry along their trust to different websites so we know that this agent has been doing a lot of work? Valentin, I'd love to think about, how do you think about trust across fingerprints? You probably know different fingerprints across different websites and know this history of accounts or history of users. How do you think about the trust layer that agents need to solve to actually diffuse AI to the real world?
Um, yeah, it's a big question, right? With human identification, we do not provide reusable identifiers that can be reused like across multiple origins. So if a person used their browser to access a website A and then get identified there by fingerprint and then goes to website B, website A owner will get a different identifier for the same user than a website B owner. So the identities are kind of sandboxed, like following the web same origin policy, like the identity will belong to the same website. So we do not provide tooling to link and enable cross-site tracking. With agentic identity, it's possible, but we're kind of in the wait mode to see how the things like forwarded protocol or WebMCP or agentic commerce protocols play out, how these opposite ends, privacy versus convenience, play out like on an industry level to understand how we can use our identification ability. I do think that Fingerprint's ability to uniquely identify each browser will be very beneficial to provide that convenient agentic identity layer. But how exactly, I think, is still undecided from my perspective. But let me know what you think. Like if you had any thoughts.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that it just comes down to, there's AI is impacting the like kind of tier one cities, right? Like everyone is using you know, Claude Code or Codex. But when I speak to people, our customers that are outside of the AI bubble, that are in emerging countries, that are in maybe areas that don't often have as much of a technology hub, they're not fully realizing the benefits of AI and they're still using the software they use every single day. So for us, we think that being able to bridge that gap is really important. And using the browser and the web that we already have, it's kind of akin to how self-driving cars on the streets of San Francisco, we didn't rebuild the car, we didn't rebuild the roads. We just taught AI how to use the car we already have to drive on the roads we already have. And part of what we're doing is that we need to have a driving test for AI. We need to kind of know, hey, are you eligible to drive on roads here? Do we trust you to drive certain types of cars or use certain types of roads? And how do we think more and more about identifying agents? And at Browserbase, the next chapter of our story is not just providing infrastructure to enable your agents to reliably browse websites and the tools to do that, but also how do we help identify your agent across websites and say, hey, this is your agent. This is the places it's been to before. Here's the sign-ins that it's made, the tools that it's accessed. And once again, if you look at the roadblocks that people often run into when they're building agents, the number one thing I see after getting their agent online is they aren't able to securely identify their agent and show that it's trusted, but also they aren't able to show, like, share the credentials reliably. And agentic authentication, which is kind of a subset of identity outside of trust, I think is really interesting because how should I let my agent log in? We talked about signing up earlier, but should my agent have access? Can I let it log into my accounts? Is as an application provider, should I let agents log in on behalf of the user? Should I have a separate login or a separate request access that agents do? I've seen a lot of really cool stuff from WorkOS recently, the authentication company, where they published something called AuthMD, where you can give a prompt that agents can read on websites to understand how they should be thinking about the authentication model that your application has. And once again, it comes back to, well, a lot of this stuff might be exposed via APIs and MCPs, in which case you've already built the native AI connectors that make sense. But sometimes it won't be exposed, and maybe it's not on your roadmap. How can you allow agents to get value out of your application and website today while you're building more native connectors if it's on the roadmap, as opposed to kind of kicking the can down the road and maybe limiting some of the business value you can get out of agents interacting with your platform? Because you just don't have a native way. So I think that there's a lot of stuff in there to go solve. I think you have to solve agentic login. I think you have to solve trust. I think you have to understand where the agents are coming from. And just like we have that driving test or a passport to go travel across countries, I'm really interested to see more and more identification, validation, and understanding of who the agent is and why they're doing what they're doing, because that's going to really connect that bridge and diffuse AI to that real economy impact that I think is going to be really meaningful in the world.
Right. Yeah, as I'm thinking back while you were describing this, I remember like just a few years ago, just to maybe say how quickly things are changing. Cloudflare and Apple kind of worked together to ship private access tokens. They wanted to reduce the friction for legitimate users. So there was a private access token enablement, like if you use macOS or iOS Ventura and your Safari automatically includes the token. And then if a website runs on top of Cloudflare, there's going to be less friction, less like turnstile checks, etc. But just wanted to say, like, those things were designed for humans using their mobile phones. Now, a mobile phone is just a chat interface to an agent running in the cloud, and that cloud agent will actually do the work on behalf of the user. So, in just a few years, the model has shifted from like handheld personal devices into cloud devices operated by personal devices. So I'm just like looking at like in surprise and awe and all of this progress happening so soon.
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
almost imagine that like agentic access of applications is an additional device. And what we found from personal access tokens is that multi-device, like users are switching devices all the time. They're traveling, they're on their phone, they're on their work computer, their work phone, their work computer, their VM, their terminal server, their agent. They're apparently Mac Mini now too, and like it does seem that multi-device access to the web has been a friction point for authentication. And I can tell you, I've had so many websites where I swear I've logged into that website a day ago and it's prompting me to go through my 2FA flow again. It's just so frictionful. Um, Being able to reliably identify and remember an agent or a person across devices, across where that could add a lot of benefits for making things easier and seamless, more seamless for the user. Of course, with the right privacy, with the right terms, with the right cross-site restrictions, all that needs to be solved. And I think that the team at Fingerprint is doing a pretty good job of it. So it's fun to collaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise. Thank you, Paul. So Delvin, should we start looking at the Q&A or let me check if we have any questions there.
Yes, it looks like folks are dropping them into the chat.
Okay. So the first question from Manan, this seems it would work if an operator agrees to use the Web Bot Auth protocol. Would it work if they do not? So we covered that. It adds a lot of convenience, but it's ultimately to the operator whether they want to sign or not. We recommend signing. Second question, how is this different than a WAF? A WAF, and WAF is a web application firewall, is a piece of infrastructure that sits in front of your website. So here, probably a WAF would be compared to what Fingerprint provides. A WAF is a system of rules, usually velocity rules that operate in a like rolling time window. Like how many times did I see, how many requests did I see from this IP address in the last 5 minutes? These type of queries are usually processed by a web application firewall. WAFs can process signed agents, but usually they don't have this level of sophistication needed to reliably determine malicious attempts, spoofing attempts, because even when you use Web Bot Auth, as a malicious actor, you could try to reuse someone else's signature, just copy the entire HTTP header block and paste it into your requests. Things like that would be happily processed by a WAF, but you also need to maintain a history of signatures, keep track of all the cryptographic, like there is a mechanism called nonce, number used once, that comes with every signature. So there is also additional checks that Fingerprint does, like data center IPs, legitimate automation in the browser, things like that. WAF doesn't get the visibility of the client side, like JavaScript land, browser APIs. WAF operates strictly on the session-less, like request response level. And many malicious detections are outside of the WAF's capabilities, and that's where you need like a more advanced tool like Fingerprint. So then what's your website? So browserbase.com and fingerprint.com. Does this throttle agents? The next question. Agent throttling could be done like on a WAF level if you identify an agent and then feed the agent provider name and identity into WAF and build a custom rule. So I think it's doable. We do not do throttling because we're not like a cloud infrastructure company. So we don't do that, but it's possible to set it up if you use a WAF and Fingerprint together. So next question. I want to understand what kind of additional load agentic users can add to the infrastructure, and what about the latency? How has the latency being managed? Because the testing each action will surely bring some additional load. So I'll let Paul talk about the signature process, how lightweight it is, and then I'll talk about the verification step.
Signature process, it's very, very lightweight. You're simply just signing each request on the egress. We've seen that it's, sub 5 milliseconds or less. So, there is some process of like signing the request, but it is extremely lightweight. And there's a lot of optimizations that you can do at the hardware level for optimizing cryptography. So thankfully, because it's cryptography and CPUs are really damn good at cryptography, you're able to do it in a much more effective process.
Yeah, on the receiving side and receiving end, what we do, we can verify with JavaScript or with a server API. And usually the verification is just maybe a couple of milliseconds on our side too. So pretty much instantaneous because we already have downloaded the public key. The signature already exists in our database. So all we do is just a e-signature verification. That's like a cryptographic single operation. So very, very fast on our side. The next question. Hello, guys. I kind of misunderstood or missed out the part about how the AI agents are being detected, if it's even possible. So the detection happens like this. When a request comes into a website that is protected by Fingerprint, Fingerprint will analyze a subset of HTTP headers coming with that request and will run the HTTP headers through a public key cryptographic process where we would use Browserbase's public key that they previously published. We would also extract from our database of known authorized agents the name of the agent, the provider, the URL, and the identity verification as a last step. So we will tell this is a browser-based agent. The identity is signed, which means we verified the signature cryptographically, and the name of the agent will be just browser-based, essentially. That's how the verification looks on our end. If someone wanted to impersonate malicious actor, impersonate an authorized agent signed by Browserbase, we would also check if the signature that was provided to us has already been used or not. And if it has already been used, we will reject it and we'll say the identity could not be verified because it's likely spoofed. That's kind of the two sides of the verification process.
Yeah, maybe I can take a stab at this one and the next one too, because I think they're very related. For companies that are opting in, for companies that are participating in Web Bot Auth who are raising their hand and registering with the counterparties such as Fingerprint, they're able to know that this traffic came from Browserbase. So you can detect that this is a known agent accessing your website, and ideally trust that it's a good one, based on either the relationship that we have with Fingerprint or evaluating Browserbase's vendor. Um, the second question is like, how do you know about like the downstream customer, the downstream agent that's being used here, as opposed to just being browser-based? Since it's like the customer of browser-based. And it's a great question about how do we offer like multi-tenancy trust for agents if they're going through a shared infrastructure provider? What we've seen is there's these new proposals to WebBot Auth to add different types of classifications and information that customers can provide to show who the agent is working on behalf of. It's kind of what we talked about earlier. There's a header in HTTP called X forwarded for. Generally, it's used if you do proxying, where you can say this is the IP that my request originally came from, and it was forwarded through a couple different nodes. You can probably do something like that with Agent Auth, though it's not done yet. But this is early days, where the original user is being forwarded along saying this agent came from this person. Paul Klein is the owner of the agent that issued this request, and it transmitted through a browser base. So I think we're not there yet in agentic identity and authentication where we are passing forward the original user's request. But I can almost imagine, and Valentin, I'd be curious to your thoughts on this. I can almost imagine that it'd be very interesting to have the agent forward along the fingerprint signature of the original customer that was making the request. If someone clicked a button and dispatched an agent, you could probably send along the fingerprint signature alongside that agent to say, hey, this is the user that issued it. And there will be a lot of use if there are going to be one human operating many agents. You might want to be able to tell that these agents all came from the same person at some point. So still a ways off, but maybe I'm not sure if you guys have been thinking about that at Fingerprint at all.
Yeah, we have. Well, we actually discussed that, and we can kind of extend the Web Auth just using the HTTP message signature further to add an additional header, and that additional header would contain the fingerprint identity ID that can be verified in a secure way using the server-side API call. So in addition to like provider name, agent, add the fingerprint identity ID, that decision, of course, belongs to the consumer, the customer Browserbase, whether they want to attach their device identity to the agentic request. But if they do want, for like additional verification purposes, for example, definitely possible to attach an additional header, and then the signature, cryptographic signature, would extend to like this new header and cryptographically sign it to, which will become unspoofable. And then Fingerprint would extract the identity ID, look it up on our site, and provide a full detailed identity payload to the website operator, telling what the device identity is, whether there are any additional risk signals or any concerns associated with that device. Okay. Next question. Any thoughts on how agents can identify? That's already answered. X401. So X401, I think it's about agentic payment, which is currently outside, if I'm not mistaken, currently outside of the Fingerprints roadmap. But we are kind of closely monitoring what's happening in the payments in the payment space there. I think that's all questions that we got, Dylan.
I see one more in the Q&A box, and it says, as an existing customer of Fingerprint Pro, does the verification and identity of AI agents using the website is built into the current Fingerprint response, or additional configuration has to be made?
If you are a Pro Plus user, that is, if you have access to the smart signals, one of the smart signals, talking from pricing and packaging perspective, one of the smart signals is called bot detection smart signal. So the bot detection smart signal, starting from API version 4, will include 5 new fields that will give you the verification results. So what you need to do is be on a Pro Plus API version 4, and you'll get that included for free. For free, I mean, like if you're already on Pro Plus. Oh, X401 is about ID. Yeah, that's something that we need to talk to the team and get back with. It's there are a lot of proposals like circulating, and X401 is the interesting one we need to look into. Thank you.
Awesome.
Cool. Any more questions from anybody? We talked a lot, so I think everyone's just done with us. Valentin, I think we did. I think we did it. We answered all the questions about agent identity. It's solved now. We did it.
Yeah. One last thing I will say, the agentic identity is critical for so many players in the industry. Web Bot Auth standard is still in draft. It's being like kind of improved and improved like every week almost. So if you don't find the features that you need, whether it's agentic commerce, agentic identity, Web Bot Auth, just wait a minute and maybe you'll get your feature. So it's moving incredibly fast. So let's stay connected, let's stay in touch. Reach out to Fingerprint's product team to discuss upcoming roadmap initiatives and things that we find exciting in the industry, and let's solve your problem together.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. And it was really fun to once again continue the partnership between Fingerprint and Browserbase and make the web safer and more useful. So really appreciate the time today.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you both for such a great discussion and for sharing your insights with us. To everyone who joined us today, we have another webinar coming up in August with ID.me, focused on workforce identity verification. You can scan that QR code to learn more and register for the session. And thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you at the next one. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Valentin.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.